Let's just wait. Let's just wait for people to filter in. And everyone's gone now. God, the timing on that is always so bad. There's gotta be a mute button. Hey, big guy. Hola, ¿cómo estás? What is going on? It's your oh so glorious and beloved Mace Valor. That's me. Alright. Since you usually only stick around for about 5 minutes, let's, that's disgusting. Great. Look, I don't want to get, I want to be able to talk about this with people. Don't get me wrong. But I don't want you to not have something to look forward to. Because part 2, a lot of crazy shit goes down, which is why I'm more interested in hearing like ideas. So you went to the end of part 1. What happens next? Like, what do you think happens next? Like, what are your ideas happens with these characters? Because you literally yelled, all right, so why? Let me, talk to me about this. Why? No, I don't need your, no, because, all right, so because it's split into 2 parts, because it's like a cliffhanger like that, it makes me as the author, like, wonder, like, all right, let me describe it like this. I've been writing this, I got blue-balled by a fucking book. Here's the deal. I've been writing this for 3 years, and it's been only me. I haven't been able to talk to anyone about this. So I haven't been getting any feedback. And, like, all my beta readers and the advanced copy readers, the advanced review copy readers, none of them gave me any feedback. No one's told me jack shit. So I haven't talked to anyone about this for, like, a long time. Oh, thank you. So, the reason why I ask all these questions and I want to know your opinion and your ideas and your thoughts and your theories, because I want to, as the author, it's like the information that I conveyed and the seeds that I put in there, I want to know if those things kind of blossomed, because I didn't want to hit too heavy on some things, but on other things I did want to put like a little, like there's a lot of foreshadowing early on in the story, like the whole thing with Themor Zippo. That I kind of wanted to put a focus on the Zippo as being an item of importance later on in the story, but I didn't want to hit it so heavy-handed. So there's a lot of talks in early chapters about burn this city to the ground and this, that, and the other, like things that are pertaining to destruction and fire and this, that, and the other. And if you pay attention early on, you can kind of pick up kind of where it's going, but it's not blatantly right out there in front of you. These are like seeds. Yeah, so that's kind of like, some people will get it, some people won't. There are seeds that I put throughout the story that, for those that are attentive to picking these things up, it'll make sense later on. And it's kind of like, I don't remember who said it, but someone, an old filmmaker. Oh, thank you. The idea is, if you show a gun, you need to use it. It's kind of like, there are so many things that have importance in the story that it gets utilized. So, like, very early on, we knew that Scott had a gun. Well, knowing that he had a gun, at some point, he has to use it, right? You don't want him to have something he's never going to use. For example, we know Scott has cigarettes. Well, he's constantly fucking smoking. And that was something that I never, ever in the story made any big deal about. He just smokes. He smokes. He smokes. He smokes. What you see in part 2, he doesn't smoke as much anymore. And the reason for that is obviously his last cigarette. And then there it is. In part 2, he smokes one more time. And I'm not going to say when, but he's kind of like whatever about it at this point. Oh, well, it's the apocalypse. You could just pick them up wherever you go. Like, oh, fuck, oh, there's a gas station. Let's go loot the gas station. Oh, there's a couple chips, whatever. Oh, there's some smokes behind the counter kind of thing. At the end of part one, he had one cigarette left. But, so, judging by the cover, it makes sense why the cover is the way that it is, right? Read what you said. So, I don't have a here. So does the cover finally make sense? Because there were some people. The cover was very flipped. The vast majority of people like the cover, right? But then there's a small section of people that I've spoken to that weren't too like they're like, oh, it's basic and this, that, and the other, and it's like, well, it's supposed to be. That's the intention for the themes of the story. But some people were like, well, I can understand if you have the city mirrored, but why is it on fire? Hey, what's going on? It's nice to know that you've finally taken a break from all the novel writing that you're doing. Yeah, it does. That's something that I'm not a big fan of, and I have no control over that. That's Amazon because Amazon they're the ones that print these books. Damn novel that'll earn me a piece of paper with my name on it. Hell yeah. So that's something that I it could be on me because it is black and white. Yeah. Only 8 more assignments until I'm a 20-year-old with a bachelor's. Congratulations. So, yeah, that's one of the things that I think that had I used more color instead of just black and white, that could have helped. But it boils down to Amazon's printing. That's what kind of sucks about it. But that's going to be addressed sometime later next year. So part 1 and then part 2. Oh, wait, hold on. Just going to bring up every time. That's all I got going for me because I kind of... Well, actually, Jade, she actually just finished reading it. Aw, that's sweet. I don't know if you really dig into that, it's kind of weird at the same time, but that's very sweet. Thank you. Jade actually just finished reading it, and Jade, can you please tell Madison here your reaction to the end of the story? Because I received the reaction early as fuck. That was the first review, so I know what happens. No, some of them aren't. Some of them are. So there are some things that are my fault. There are some things there that shouldn't be there in the first place. So I know my mom was one of the ones that got a bad copy of it from Amazon. So it sucks. I don't know. It's long drawn out story, but some of those things have been rectified. Not all of them. But for my mistakes, you got to remember I'm a solo crew on this. All right, I did everything on my own. So are there errors there? Yeah, but that's a lot of shit. I'm not used to 2 vaginas being in chat. Did you just assume Jade's gender? You can only hear Scott is my voice. Oh, hold on. Scott's a redhead, though. Alright, I'll show you who I base Scott off of. So most of the characters in the story, I didn't really picture someone, right? With some of the characters, like I had someone in my mind, but it was never exact. This, in my brain, while I was writing the story, this is exactly what Scott looks like. Let me see if I can find a better picture of him. First of all, that band. See, rectify. All right. Why won't it let me? Boom. Austin Emilio. That's basically what Scott looks like. I'm not really bothering to read the chat. Mace, yes, Mace, check your privilege. We'll never check my privilege because I don't have any privilege. That guy that got his face burned off in The Walking Dead. Yes, Austin Emilio. So when I was writing Shelter, that was the face and the voice that I had for Scott while writing it. Yes, I want to see. Let's check this out. Oh, you guys can actually hear it? Yeah, the computer is extremely loud. And Dwight from The Office. Not so much Dwight from The Office, more so Rainn Wilson. If you look up pictures of Rainn Wilson today, that's more in line what Themmer looks like. Dwight, no, not so much. The way that Dwight talks, yeah, because the cadence of his voice with the way he says stuff, he's ugly. He's kind of supposed to be. Who? Austin Emilio? I don't think he's that bad looking. Are you supposed to be sending me something, or am I looking for something? All right. So if the computer's too loud, I'm just gonna turn it off. It takes a while to actually shut off, even though I press the button. So look this up. Oh, I'm not gonna actually build. Just send it to me and I'll check it out later, because once I'm streaming, I can't really fuck with anything else, or else the stream will shut off. So anyway, Q&A time. That's kind of the whole premise of me doing this stream. So questions, comments, concerns, please hit me. I'm an open book. She's watching the baby. Or toddler. Kid, or I don't know, he's 3 now. He turned 3 on the 16th of November. And his brother turned 10 on the 23rd of November. I also noticed you put a bit of HVAC in there. Yeah, I did, because originally, where the fuck did the time go? I know, right? It flies by. You guys want a hug? These aren't kisses, these are hugs. Do you know why they're hugs? Because the chocolate is hugged by some, like, it's stripes, see? I know, that's insane. And I never got to meet Jimmy, so kind of upset about that. Anyway, what is there, something else? Yeah, the HVAC stuff. So I put the HVAC stuff in there. Originally, it was just like a placeholder thing, because when I first started writing Shelter, I was working HVAC. And I didn't really know what I wanted what I wanted because I needed Scott had to have some kind of background. So it's crippling. It's depressing. The only thing I could think of at the time of writing was the HVAC thing, because originally he was just some homeless guy, but it's changed since then, obviously. Oh fuck! So you guys don't know a tremendous amount of Scott's background. So Jade, let me ask you, because it part 1 doesn't specify, but do you know why Scott went to Chicago? Yeah, so I put the HVAC stuff in there originally just as like a placeholder thing until I could think of something better. And then I kept the HVAC stuff in there because I needed a reason. It was said in the book, well, he had business to attend to in Chicago, but in part 1, he never specifies why he actually went there. Well, that's another thing too. Out in part 1 and part 2, it never specifies where he came from. Oh wait, no shit. In the last chapter, there's like a weird flashback thing. Well, not flashback, but he's like remembering when the reset happened. Yeah, he was in Austin, Texas when the reset happened. And he went from Austin, Texas to Chicago. But there's a reason why. Hello. Welcome. Yeah, he didn't. So, and remember I said that every time I bring something up, it's for a reason. So remember early on in the story, Scott is referred to as like the crypt keeper, or he's referred to as the grave robber. This is the one spoiler I'll give you, because it's not explained until part 2. Scott went from Austin, Texas, all the way to Chicago, Illinois, for the watch. And the watch was in a coffin on his decaying father's wrist. And he dug up his father's grave and took the watch. There's a lot more information that goes along with that, but that's why he went to Chicago, because he wanted that fucking watch back. I know it might sound dumb just saying it like that, but if you knew all the other ins and outs. The one that Themor, yeah, because all right, so it's a Rolex. I think part 1 it didn't specify what watch it was. Yeah, that's why he would never give it over to Themor. Themor likes the watch just because it's a Rolex. But for Scott, it's a family heirloom. Themor, he knows that that's a family heirloom because he saw Scott. That's how the two of them met, because he saw Scott digging the fucking graves. Or digging up the grave. That's why he refers to him as the grave digger, the crypt keeper, whatever. Well, yeah, because Themor, so one of his things is he's obsessed with watches and stuff like that, because he's looking towards the future. Themor's looking towards, like, how do we survive into the future? And one of the things for him is eventually electricity as we know it, it's going to be obsolete. There's not really any way we can be self-sustaining with electricity. So within maybe a year or two, we're going to run out of gas. We're going to run out of, like things are going to start breaking down, right? So we're not going to have electricity anymore. So we need to be able to tell time. What are we talking about? Fake news CNN? Well, fake news is the brand of choice of CNN. So we're all big fans of Trump here. So yeah, CNN can go fuck themselves. The Young Turks as well. The Young Turks need to go suck some dicks. Where was I? No, we're talking about my book Shelter. There's like a Q&A going on with some of the fans. So, um, sorry, Jade. Where was I? Why'd this Toyota Camry? So Cam, because it's even said, it's like she didn't know what else to do. You know, she was like kind of on her own trying to figure shit out. And the other thing too, it's like she was forcing herself to be independent. Like she wasn't trying to rely on other people while arranging like the whole heist and everything. Because if you saw the way that she's treated in the North, you know, she's kind of treated like she's pretty much disposable. And so when she's working for Shaw, she wants to like prove herself. So her bright idea was to use these fucking fireworks, which yes and no. It's like part of it like works very well to like signal like this is our big thing, but just like Scott said, that's fucking stupid. And like Shaw said, um, well, so even Scott said like, oh, I don't know if her nudes really got leaked. I'm pretty sure it was like a PR damage control thing. So because she had at the time she had some other controversy going on. Yeah, I know. That's the thing about Cam. So the whole premise is that the fireworks would go off, and then what's his name Matthews would get on the radio, and he would draw all the cops to wherever the explosion in town was happening. But that didn't end up working because they got caught up. Wait, what was funny? I missed it. Oh, here's something, because when I wrote this, I had a very particular intention for it, but I understand that when you're reading it, oh, yeah. So that's Scott's like conspiracy theory. It's like I think this bitch is. I think, you know. Um, here's the thing. So from a reader, how do you feel about the relationship between Scott and Camry? Do you feel like something is happening, or like he's growing to be attracted to her, or what is it? Because I wrote that a very specific way with a very specific intention, but I feel that it might be taken the wrong way. It feels too easy. Because I feel like I'm probably, the way I wrote it might go against my intentions. Because my intention is not for the two of them to become a couple, not for them to become a thing. Um, um, I no, seems too easy. I don't know. No, you didn't hurt my feelings. I'm trying to figure out what you mean by it feels too easy. Um, my goal is not for Scott and Cameron to become a thing. They're not going to become a couple. I have no plans at all in any of the stories of Shelter, Refuge, whatever. They're not going to become a couple. They're not going to become a thing. Well, it shouldn't be expected. I didn't want it to be expected. So this is my angle. My goal was, you kind of see Scott have a one-track mind. His whole, I want her to fuck him over. Why do you want her to fuck him over? He saved her fucking life, man. Why would you want her to fuck him over? He just saved her fucking ass from Harris. The sauciness of it all. So look, here's the thing with Camry, right? The whole premise, like between the two of them, like kind of like how when Scott's thinking about her, he finds her to be cute and like he sees that she's capable. He may not agree with like all the shit that she does, but he realizes like, hey, this bitch is capable. Like she can hold her own. That's why he doesn't really go too far out of his way defending her or anything, because he knows that she can take care of herself. But the whole premise of that, like, where it looks like Scott is like attracted to her, and no, it's the idea of her. Oh, I was just putting trash in here. So it's the idea, because he has such a one-track mind of like, get out of Chicago, go back to Texas, fuck this place. Like, that's his only thing. He just cares about getting himself the fuck out of Dodge, right? But the idea of Camry kind of, it talks about like what Fenmore was talking about. It's like, Scott, man, you need to think of the future, man. Like, what are we going to do as a civilization? And Scott's like, I don't care. Fuck it. Scott doesn't have a whole lot on his own to live for, right? He doesn't, like, he just has himself and he's content with that. But seeing Camry, and he realizes that, yeah, he's attracted to this girl. He's like attracted to the idea of this woman. And for him, that says a lot. It's like, well, maybe I should look for something long term. Maybe I should look at something, worth getting out of bed for. Maybe I should look for something beyond myself. Maybe I should look for a life partner or something like that. Something to make this world make sense. That's what that represents. It's like he's starting to get this idea after, meeting Camry. Wrong. What do you mean? What's wrong? I have no idea what you're talking about. Do what yourself? No, all it does is it all right, so it doesn't mean specifically like a relationship. Oh my god. That's grim. All right, so I'll give you a preview for part 2. So part 2 opens up with Andrew. We find out that Andrew, he's a little beaten up, but he's okay. Long story short, he's essentially like kidnapped. He's imprisoned in this building with 2 other people. And one of those people is Danny. So it finally makes sense. The diary starts to make sense. You start to piece together like how this diary came into effect, and that's because fucking Danny's there. And in part 2, there's still more diary entries. So through the diary entries, that's how you see she got there. It's not really that crazy. But, so you remember Steven, right? The trucker from in Chicago? Well, he's from Boston. Danny was in Boston. So, not too long after the reset happened, the whole world was in the middle of going to shit, right? Well, the way that she got from Boston all the way over to Grand Rapids, she actually made it as far as Detroit. And then when Steven booked it out of Detroit, she was left there. Like, she kind of like, they stopped off in Detroit and they realized, holy shit, there's these crazy motherfuckers eating people. So when Steven fucking bounced, Danny was there as well. And they got kind of separated. Yeah. So these people that picked up Scott or Andrew, they're people that come from Detroit, which hopefully you've kind of I throughout the story I've put the seeds of Detroit in. So these are some of the threats that come from Detroit. So Detroit, there's not a lot of resources left. So with Chicago, with the North, with the South, it didn't matter. Both sides, even though they were using resources, they also had their own ways of trying to keep things somewhat renewable, try to bring an influx of of sustainability. But Detroit on the other hand, they just kind of went at it. Like it was total anarchy. All the food was used up, all the gas was used up, all the clean water and stuff, like anything that could be utilized as a resource was fucking used up within the first 6 months of the reset. And then that's when they kind of went over to cannibalism. So the survivors in Detroit, they essentially hold slaves, and some of the slaves they eat. So they send out groups towards Grand Rapids and down south and here, like they send groups all over the place, right? And you can actually look up on a map these places. So Lowell is actually kind of in between. I wonder what humans taste like. Probably not good. Or probably really good, unfortunately. So these people from Detroit, they send groups out. So this group that went off after Andrew, these are people from Detroit. These people, I don't want to say they're as bad as the cannibals in Detroit, because what these people do is they trade, they go out, they kidnap people, they bring them back, and they trade these people for other resources. That's how they operate. They don't mind going out on the road because they can scavenge food in any town that they go to. They themselves don't eat people. So, and part two, there's going to be some seeds of things to happen in Refuge with this group that Andrew's met up with. But needless to say, things are going to be a-okay. Scott, when it finishes off, the first chapter of part two, Andrew's a-okay. He meets Danny and another individual that are both imprisoned, and that's when there are some revelations that start coming to light when he meets these people, and he starts connecting dots that make a lot more sense. And you have patient problems. It's going to be between March and April. I've decided right now I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to kind of let the holidays do its thing. I'm going to focus just on work. So probably mid-January or the first week of February, I'll get back on and wrapping things up. I need to kind of take a break from it, because especially like, let's see, I think June, like all the way up to October, it was crunch time. Like any free moment I had, I was writing. And it's a lot, because you're going in and you're writing, and then you have to go back and make adjustments, and yeah, it's crazy. I would spend like at least an average of 6 days or 6 hours a day in here solely just doing that. Oh, absolutely. Anyway, so after we figure out all the stuff with Andrew, he's fine in part two. Then we go over to Scott. And then Scott picks up right where he left off. So Scott's still alive. He's not dead, obviously. But that is my favorite chapter in the entire story. It's also the longest chapter in the entire Shelter story. And that is, what is it? Chapter 17, I believe. What was that? Yeah, chapter 17. Run, boy, run. Essentially, get the fuck out of Chicago, because you have the cops in the north trying to kill you. The fucking Shaw and his gang, they're going to try to kill you now. You fuck them over, Scott, he could have just walked away and everything would have been fine. But he grew a conscience. And he's like, I'm not going to let these guys use this drug to fucking enslave everyone in town. So that's when he took the Zippo and tossed it in. So it was a very redeeming thing for him, because up until this point, Scott's been pretty selfish. He's been, thinking of only his own selfish interests. Is there more with Kim in part two? No, Kim is another seed. We're really not going to see a whole lot of Kim for a very, very long time. In my outline, he is in refuge, but there's not a huge focus on him. Um, but like I said, I've said this before, is I focus on one book at a time and I make an outline for the next one. So Shelter's pretty much done. I have the outline, like, like kind of the roadmap for Refuge. I'm still tooling around with a few ideas on it before anything's ironclad. And then, if depending on how I write it, um, I might do a third one. I didn't come out the gate with the idea of it being a trilogy or anything like that. I do know that, you know, if people like Shelter and they want to read on, they can. But it really depends on how I write on how I write Refuge and whether or not I'll do a third one. Um, but by the time I finish this one, the way that I ended it, it's like, all right, this storyline is done. Like, we've kind of closed the door on this storyline, but we have not closed the door on these characters. So if you think you're upset right now, you're going to be even more upset at the end of part two. I think the end of part two, you'll be you'll be you'll feel way stronger at the end of that than the end of this, because what ends up happening at the end of part two is insane. Um, it's a lot more of a, and that's kind of intentional, because I knew very, very early on this is exactly how I want to end it. So how do I justify this ending? So all I got to say is pay very close attention to Andrew. That's the only spoiler I'll give. Andrew is the one that makes the ending how that is. Scott, he, ever since this whole Chicago thing happened, he's already on his path to redemption. He's changing as a person. This is really what blossoms his character arc. This is when he starts being less selfish. He starts opening up. This henchman that he's been for months and months and months, that side of him goes away, and he's becoming something else now. He's becoming far different from how he was before because of this traumatic experience. Because once he did this thing, this him trying to save Chicago by lighting this box on fire, it actually has pretty fucking bad ramifications by him doing this. So, and that's when we start to see a big change in Scott. But Andrew, not so much, because you got to remember, Andrew, he comes from a very different life, very different family, very different upbringing. And so him going out to try to force this change on himself and prove that he's a man and all this shit, it's fucking stupid. Like, why would you do this? Just stay where you're at, chill. But he's young, he's dumb, he wants to prove himself a man, he wants to go get his dick wet. And then he kind of realizes how stupid he is. Like after this whole kidnapping thing. And then information comes to, yeah, oh god, Andrew's a total dumbass. He's and that's like the idea of Shelter. It's not just the apocalypse and look for shelter. It a lot of it has to do with Andrews. Andrew is a very sheltered individual. He's come from such a privileged life that he like has no idea what the world is truly really like. Like, for example, when he met Jack and Finn, right? Like, his perception, like, he first like thought that, oh my god, these guys are gonna kill me, and these guys were actually pretty mellow dudes for the most part. They're like, hey, we're gonna take your food, but is there anything we can give you in return? Because we're fucking hungry, we want to eat, but we don't want to screw you over. So we're taking your food no matter what, but can we give you anything anyway? Kind of thing. Like, they're survivors. They're doing everything they can to survive, but at the same time, they don't want to screw someone else over. Scott would have, well, because Andrew's like a kid, he's looked at as a child, like, even though he's older. Scott probably wouldn't have taken anything from it because that's just how Scott operates. But if it was like a full-grown man, Scott would have just taken their shit and walked away. Scott doesn't give a fuck. That's, he's like, hey, I take what I want from who I want, just not kids, women, or cripples. And that's one part of the story when he saved, yeah. So when he saved Cam, that's another seed, the seed of like the whole abusive father thing. It was like this flash in his head, like this anger when he witnessed what Harris was doing, and that's something that really upset him. Is that which makes a lot more sense. Which no spoilers, but in the chapter, in the air tonight, yeah, like the Phil Collins song, in that chapter, that's when no women, no cripples, no kids, that finally makes sense in that chapter. Scott kind of opens up, you know, after a certain character dies, Scott is so overwhelmed. Oh my god, I really want to tell you this, but I would rather wait and then get your reaction because the chapter in the air tonight is the most emotional. Like you're gonna feel something more in that chapter than in any other part of the book. Um, no, in that chapter, no, not John. I will tell you right then and there, not John. Right then and there. Um, Very specifically, John he's very involved in that chapter, but he's not at any risk of dying at that point in the story. Not saying that he is or is not later on or before. I'm just saying in that one chapter, that is a very John Scott chapter. And it's kind of like, without spoiling anything, Scott kind of realizes that he's been with John for a very long time, but and he trusts John and he thinks of John as a friend, but when he really thinks about it, he doesn't know anything about John. He's been selfish. He hasn't. That would be racist. Oh, the whole black guy dies first. Well, no, Harris was white, and Harris was the first to die in the story. So, yeah, I think you're good. Yeah, Harris. Yeah, no, Harris was the first to die in Shelter, which I never actually thought of until now. It's like, wait a minute, yeah. So, because the thing is, I didn't want to like have a lot of deaths. Also, does Scott just know sign language? Wait, what? Scott? He wasn't a main character though. Scott is the main character. What are you talking about? I'm kind of lost. So, the chapter in the air tonight makes sense. There was Harris and the guy in the field with Andrew. I don't count the guy in the field with Andrew, and the reason why is because he's a stranger. He's had no lines of dialogue or anything. Oh, so his death doesn't matter. Okay. And yeah, Scott. Wait. Also, does Scott just know sign language? Scott knows sign language very fluently, but there's a reason why he knows sign language, which is explained in the chapter in the air tonight. That chapter kind of Scott makes a lot more sense. Once you read that chapter, you're like, holy shit, there's a lot of layers to this guy. It kind of makes sense why he is the way that he is now. Holy shit. Um, it's a very emotional chapter. Um, John does something that'll probably make most people cry. At first, it's very confusing. John does this thing, and you're like, what the fuck? And then he explains himself, and then you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. John's a big teddy bear. John is one of those characters that I wrote where I wish I could have done more with him, but I think by making him do very little, and just kind of being present was enough, you know. And part of the reason why I've done that is because it helps reinforce Scott's character arc, because it's from Scott's perspective, and the fact that he hasn't paid a lot of attention to John, it kind of makes it seem as if, well, if John is so important, then how come Scott doesn't really make a big deal about him? You can't kill the heartthrob like that. I don't know if I'd call him a heartthrob. It's just people like John. John's just he's himself. He's quiet. He don't bother nobody. You know. Um, yeah. So I'm gonna go take care of the baby because I can hear him running around, and his mom's probably losing her shit. But I'm glad that we could chit chat. Thank you so much, and hopefully I made some sense of everything. Trust me, I want to talk more and more and more about it. But the more I just kind of hint towards things, the more I'm gonna want to just be like, okay, well here's what happens, and I really don't want to do that because trust me, part two because part two is so fucking like there's so much shit going on in part two. Um, the more like I can't say more than I already have. So basically, what I've told you would be the equivalent of what would be in the description of the story, the synopsis. So I haven't revealed too much. Anyway, I'm your host, so glorious and beloved Mace Valor. I'm gonna go check on the kid. You have a wonderful evening. As always, you're so glorious and beloved Mace Valor. Sign.